Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Palo Alto Unified School District. The date is Tuesday, June 2nd, and it is 4:03 p.m. We have a very limited agenda today, and the board will shortly be recessing to closed session. Before we do, there's an opportunity for comment on closed session items. The only closed session agenda item today, hang on, I have to read it, is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54957.6 with regarding PAEA and the CSEA, our two bargaining units. If there are any comments on that, you can raise your hand at this time and we'll take comment on closed session items. I do see one hand, so let's take that right away. And that's Catherine Jordan. Go ahead, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you to the board for this opportunity. In a number of countries that are a bit further along than ours, that are doing thorough testing, contact tracing, and quarantining, school openings have been quickly followed in some cases by school closings. More than 200 schools in South Korea have recently been forced to close just days after they reopened due to a spike in virus cases. In Jerusalem, dozens of students have tested positive along with staff, and schools have been forced to shut, returning to remote learning. In France, 70 COVID-19 cases linked to the schools, and the affected schools are being closed immediately. In Finland, the same thing. There's been some exposure 2 days after school reopening, dozens of teachers and pupils exposed. As a result, remote learning has to resume for those schools. It looks as though it'll be a process of fits, stops, and starts, potentially for in-person schooling in this COVID-19 environment without a vaccine or a cure available. To ensure continuous learning for our students, we parents ask that Palo Alto Unified provide all channels of instruction for our students, including live streaming of our teachers' instruction, recorded instruction from our teachers for later viewing, as well as in-person instruction, assuming that's possible. It can be done. It is being done locally, nationally, internationally, and even by Palo Alto Unified, which is hosting live streaming for Dr. Austin's webinars, posting them for later viewing on YouTube. Palo Alto Unified can live stream classes, can record them and post them for later viewing. Given that Palo Alto Unified predicts we'll be in a hybrid situation for the fall, meaning 2 days of in-person classes for students and 3 days of stay-at-home learning, it's key and it's extremely important to offer live streaming of instruction, recorded teacher instruction, along with the in-person instruction. We asked the board, when discussing any labor negotiations today or subsequently, that any agreement with labor must include all of these channels of instruction to serve our students safely in this COVID-19 environment. Live streaming, Palo Alto Unified teacher instruction, recorded Palo Alto Unified teacher instruction, as well as in-person instruction, assuming that's possible. And along with that we complete year-long curriculums and that our students receive pre-COVID quantity of instructional minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. That looks like it for comment on closed session items. So with that, we'll recess to closed session and we'll be back in open session around 5 p.m. All right, so board members, I'll see you in the closed session meeting. So why don't we get started? Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School Board of Trustees. The board met in closed session and took no reportable action. Before we proceed, we need to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda.
A second.
All right, Mr. Durop and Ms. Baton Caswell. Dr. Austin, can you take the roll?
Yes, we do not have our students any longer, so we'll just go through. This might be out of order, I'm sorry. So Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Ms. Baton Caswell,
Aye.
Mr. Drop,
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye. And let me note for the record that Ms. DeBrienza did join us for a portion of the closed session, but had to excuse herself, so will not be joining us for open session. Okay, thank you. Because this is a special meeting, we do not have our open forum public comment period, so we're limited to the agenda that is that's posted. And so we'll proceed directly to discussion items, and the first one is item 2A, COVID-19 update. Let me just remind any attendees, if you want to comment on the agendized item, you can raise your hand, and we'll either by pressing the hand raise function in Zoom or pressing *9 if you're dialed in by phone, and we'll call on you when it's time for public comment and give you time to comment. All right, Dr. Austin, please take it away with COVID-19 update.
Yeah, looking forward to a day when that's not an update. But for now it is, and we got the new order from Santa Clara County. I was also in the all-county superintendent's meeting today. So I'm just going to hit on some of the things that we may have interest in related to the order. First of all, this order should not be seen as an order to tell us how we're going to open schools in August. And they made that very clear. So something that may be in place today may or may not have anything to do with what the order is when we get to August for classrooms, okay? So some things, camps, childcare can reopen with guidelines, and it is no longer only for essential workers. So 12 or less in a stable cohort. I'm going to tell you some of the things in the order, and some of these have some pretty obvious challenges. They said that it would be an expectation that students who attend in a program in a stable cohort are only in that cohort and not attending other programs. Well, clearly, we are not going to be able to follow around every kid to see where they go. Also, there was a real disconnect when the question was posed to the health department. Well, okay, fine. A kid comes to one of our camps, they're on our campuses, they're in a cohort, and maybe it's even something we're putting on. It's unreasonable to think that that kid is not going to go and potentially have contact with people outside of that cohort, other places. And the initial response was, well, no, that person's supposed to go home to shelter in place with their family. And then the laundry list of things that are open came up. It's like, well, you can't tell them to do that when the kid can walk on our tennis court right this minute. And they can go to a store, and they can go, sounds like pretty soon, to California Avenue or University Avenue and have dinner outside. So there are just a lot of contradictions, inconsistencies. But as far as the order reads, anyone using our facilities over the summer will have to do so with this order in mind, which means a stable cohort, 12 or less. Now, interesting clarification, adults do not count in that count. So 12 kids plus 3 adults is not 15, it's still 12, okay? Summer school, extended school year, can reopen now with 12 or less students, and we believe it will for extended school year for special education. We still do not plan to hold an in-person summer school program this summer, and I've asked Ms. Ofek to walk us through our summer school plan on Friday. So there is still some light revisions happening tonight, and that document had a couple pieces. I'd rather have just one clean thing to look at. So we'll have that ready for everybody on Friday. Okay. Masks are expected, but the expectations are, there are exceptions for medical purposes, including people that have sensitivity to masks. In our case, we have some special education students that couldn't wear a mask if we wanted them to. They either for medical reasons or for reasons that the irritation would not allow that to take place. There are going to be exemptions there. The new order, I was taking notes feverishly. I know some of you dove right into the actual document. Mine was coming off of the notes. Is that masks will be required for ages 13 and older, and suggested, encouraged for grades ages 7 through 12. There's a lot of discussion about that. I think the important piece on that one is to remember this is not talking about opening schools. This is for other stuff right now. So I just don't want us to go down trying to do all of our planning for opening schools around this particular order. The other one that they talked about was that the masks are encouraged while under direct supervision. So there was some question about, well, what does that mean during free time? If you take your 12 kids out to a recess kind of period, is the mask essential, not essential? They're going to get us some more clarification on that. Interesting. Other activities that are opening up, pools can reopen, but they did not tell us if they were open to be rented out to outside facilities. And if so, what are those restrictions? Is it 12? Is it 25 because it's outside? So while there's information in the document, there was enough ambiguity where they're going to come back to us on Friday for our follow-up visit on that topic. Professional development can occur. And what I believe I heard them say is we could have up to 25 members in sitting together with social distancing and a mask, that they saw that as an essential activity of doing our essential work of teaching and learning. Our coaches will be able to run summer camps with social distancing. I'm going to be reaching out to both of our activities directors to talk about what that looks like. And if they're watching, or if any of our coaches are watching, don't do anything until we have a chance to talk. We're going to make sure we get this right. Again, the public health department was trying to distinguish between sports, and we put them back on the idea that who cares what the sport is? Let's talk about the distancing, and can we take measures to make sure that all those things are in place and not start focusing on an A and a B list of sports. I think you can run drills and do lots of things without contact, even in contact sports. I only have 2 more points here. In fact, 1 more point. Facilities and athletic recreation equipment can be used and sanitized after each group is done. So for an example, if we went out and there was an acceptable distance activity with an athletic team that had the right number and everything, we could just say, okay, before the next group of an acceptable number comes in, anything that was high use, high touch needs to be sanitized. So I would say this is overall a very positive day for us as far as getting some news about a path back towards getting into some things that start to feel like kids being kids, but with lots of cautions on top of it too. So that's it for my report on that topic. I can take any thoughts or questions anyone might have, and some of you may even be able to clarify some of the things I talked about.
Okay, rather than go around, why don't I just ask for people to raise hands? Go ahead, Shauna.
Is there any guidance on if masks, and I understand this is only for now, we don't know what it's going to look like with respect to reopening, but if the guidance is similar with regards to masks when we reopen, is there any sense you're getting from the county about who will be providing the masks, where instruction about how to wear masks will come from, discussions about why to wear masks for elementary school kids, I think goes to mental health, dealing with sort of emotional wellness at a time where these restrictions are being forced on students. Is there any guidance from the county about what that will look like? You're muted.
In one of the worst kept secrets, the governor was supposed to release guidelines a week ago, and it's been stalled. And while they weren't released, you can read them lots of places. It's San Francisco Chronicle, EdSource has published them. That had pretty clear guidelines. It's going to be cloth mask, teachers required, frontline workers in offices, custodians, in latex gloves and surgical masks. So they're really pretty specific. I don't know where that's going to go now. And I'm only talking about it publicly because it's been published everywhere. We're going to have to see where that goes. I will say that I've asked the question more than a few times about age appropriate times for masks. And, is it really appropriate to mandate mask for TK, K, grades 1? And I don't know how far that goes up, but there's some place in there where, we're going to want some guidance, and we're going to want to know, okay, if that's not required, then what are the guidelines about how you mitigate that? So what are the sanitizing steps that we should take? How often should we go out and wash hands and do those things? But no, we are all equally frustrated that at this point in time, there is not guidance, and we can expect that even when there is, it will conflict. So very possible that either CDE or governor's office will release something, and our own county will have a different idea. We've been told when that happens, the guiding document will be whatever is most restrictive. Okay, so our county can't be less restrictive than the state order. And we can't point to the state order and say that's our guideline when a county says to do more. Okay, so I hope that answers your question.
It does. I think that the county's orders put us in the position of teaching students how to be safe and healthy at the risk of being non-compliant. I mean, the onus is on us to ensure compliance with the county orders, and that means teaching things like proper mask wear. So I would hope that the county also, puts out guidance as to how that should be done properly, because our teachers are educators, they're not nurses and doctors.
Well, and we're also hopeful, and so is our Santa Clara Public Health Department, that they can somehow find a way to be aligned with the neighboring counties. And some of our neighboring counties, it depends who you ask. They'll say we're too restrictive, and our county will say they broke off and did their own thing. Regardless, it's weird if we're going to have a set of rules for our county and literally across the street, there's a completely different playbook for what's going to happen to address the same exact disease. So we're hoping for some consistency, but that's out of our hands.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Dr. Austin, I don't know if you've gotten to this point, but I'm wondering how a teacher in a classroom with a mask on is going to be able to project their voice out to the class. And I know that we have these things that some of the teachers, at least at the elementary, wear to project their voices. Have we tried that with masks? Is anyone talking about this at all?
Yeah, so I just got an assist on that one. Face shields are something that we're talking about that's obviously less restrictive. We also don't know if it'll comply. So, part of this we just have to see. Like we thought for, especially if you're thinking, I know you're thinking about the projection part, which is important. But we were thinking about the social emotional part with little kids looking at their teacher. We want them to be able to see the teacher's face if that's possible. So we were thinking face shields. But if face shields don't comply, then it's a mask. And I've even seen some places where people are wearing the mask and a face shield. And, we just don't know yet. But your concern about things like projection, yeah, those are all real things.
I have one more question, and that's about the summer camps or summer openings of things. What is the expectation on our monitoring? For example, one of the things that I thought was very confusing in the new order is you can go play tennis, but only have 2 households can be playing at a time. How do we operate in that kind of environment, and what is the expectation on our enforcing that?
Well, since my office is 20 feet from the tennis courts, I can tell you, apparently a couple of our tennis pros have a lot of nieces and nephews because they're out there all day long with different kids. So I can tell you those are violated daily. And it is not, and we got clarification on this. They do not expect us to go police things like over the summer, who's using our facilities. They're struggling with some of their own rules. I got to tell you, when you're on the live calls, you can see it. Now, look, we're all struggling with stuff, so I'm not mocking it. We stumble around as much as anybody else on some of these things, but they create a rule, and then immediately people find every exception to it. You know, let's keep social distancing, but you can go outside. And if you're outside exercising, you don't have to wear a mask. Well, go walk the Baylands. If you go walk the Baylands, there are hundreds of people out there on the trails. Our skate park is open. You know, I live by Greer Park. So walk over, the skate park has, 15 kids and a couple adults inside the fenced area. And yet the bench that sits immediately outside is covered in caution tape. So, and I get it, it's complex, but as the rules are evolving, the inconsistencies and contradictions become more glaring. And we're just going to have to ride this one out for a little bit. And, everyone acknowledged too that with the marches and the gatherings of people right now, we just had, at one estimate, 200 people yesterday that were over by El Camino, many of which were our students. I watched the video. Some are in masks, some aren't. No matter what, there's no social distancing. And I'm not saying let's shut down protests. Please don't start pulling me in on those words. But clearly groups of people are finding places where they are together. And it's going to be harder and harder to control. So we'll see. These are hard issues to work through.
So Don, can I ask, in terms of camps and pools, are we expecting that we are going to rent our facilities to outside operators to run camps and both swim and other camps this summer?
That one, they want us to wait till Friday to get a clarification because I think they were not ready to answer that question.
Okay.
Specifically around, okay, if we rent out to an outside organization and they violate, well, now what do we do? If we say 12 people and you have to be distanced and you walk over and that's not the case, what do you do? What about competitions? What they basically said is start with the things that you really have tight control on and work out from there. But they were going to come back Friday with better guidance around that.
Because I presume that's something that's of, kind of, I don't know if urgent's the right word, but pressing interest to a lot of our families of younger children who are trying to figure out what their summer arrangements are for their children, and as well as camp operators to try to figure out if they have a venue or not. So
look,
we can't go any faster than the clarity we get, but as soon as we have clarity, I think it's useful to tell people.
Well, and Mr. Collins, the flip side of that is I don't want us to go any slower than we need to either. So as soon as we can go and we really feel good about what the rules are and that we can do it, I'm hoping that we can get going and start doing it. And
then my other question or just clarification is that you're going to talk on, we have another meeting like this one on Friday, and we're going to talk about plans for summer school which I gather will also include material that's generally available, not just for kids who are invited to summer school for our, our usual kind of enrichment and credit recovery summer school, but a more general offering?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because I know that's of interest again for parents who are trying to figure out now that school is ending, like, what do I do now? I think to the extent that we have an offering for them, I'm sure they're interested in hearing about it.
We'll have a couple things, just a quick foreshadow. We have tools and things that right now students and parents really like, and they're going to be available. We're just confirming a couple of those contracts, make sure we're not missing on a timeline. And then we have an entire SEL curriculum for, is it K-8? For K-8 that we're working on that's got some really neat features. We're going to walk everyone through that, so you'll get to see what those things together look like. And
And is it anticipated that those don't start until July?
well, some of the things, some of the tools that we're already using for reading, math, so they go all the way through this month for sure, with the kids' access uninterrupted.
Okay.
We're looking to see if we can extend it another month on top of it.
Great.
Then that's in addition to the SEL curriculum that will be available with even some live lessons and doing some really pretty neat things.
Excellent. Hey, if there, I see 2 hands raised for public comment. Are there any other board member question or comments? Ken, you were the only person I think who hasn't gone. Nothing. All right, then let's take public comment. And I see 2 hands raised. The first is CSEA 301, and then next will be Linda Hennigan.
Hi, this is Meb Steiner. Apparently, I'm still logged in through my other Zoom.
I was going to speculate that it was you, Meb, but I didn't want to presume.
So thank you. I actually just had a clarification question. I was a little confused. I heard both that we are not doing summer school in person, but also heard that we might be doing it for special ed. So I wanted to clarify that. And I appreciate how difficult it is to come to any decisions as things are constantly changing. I do want to understand or have a better understanding of what kinds of sanitizing materials we're supposed to use and the safety of those and impact on health of kids. And then the masks, we probably have to think about child size masks. Many other countries do have smaller children wearing masks. We could make it fun for them as a dress up to be age appropriate. It is a lot of things to think about. But I just am trying to see if there's something that we can proactively do in terms of understanding the types of cleaning materials and who is allowed to do it. Some materials are not allowed to be used by untrained people. I know that to be true from our custodial staff's information. So that was that. But just the one clarifying question about summer school and special ed would be really appreciated. I get lots of folks asking about that. Thank you.
Sir Collins, if you don't mind, I can address that one right now since I did throw it out there the first time. So just to clarify, for the extended school year, we're looking only extended school year secondary futures students. Huh? Cool. Yeah, for the face-to-face, sorry. Another assist. So for the face-to-face, that's what we're looking at, okay? And for cleaning products, boy, what the state was going to put out was very specific. So we might just start with that. And it's, what they're saying is the products you have 60% alcohol. And then there are marked specifically to not negatively impact students with asthma. So they really got a very specific list that we'll be working off of. And Ms. Chow has that list as well. So they've really narrowed down exactly what schools should be using.
The other speaker is Linda Hennigan.
Hello, thank you for letting me give my comment. I keep hearing that the county and the state health order is to keep stable groups of children with one caregiver or teacher. And I'm curious to know how that relates to the ideas of reopening schools with, like in elementary, possibly having the classes split in half, but the same teacher teaching both halves at different times. So you're crossing one caregiver across two different stable groups. And in middle and high school, crossing over small groups as they rotate through their day to different teachers. Is that going to be allowed under the health guideline? Are we hoping it'll be allowed? Or where are we with crossing one caregiver across small stable groups? Thank you.
Dr. Austin, I don't know if you know the answer.
Yeah. Boy, if I knew that answer with certainty, I'd be the first. Couple things. You're going to see the word a lot when practicable. And that's going to come in a lot of the guidelines. And again, the guidelines for reopening school are not out yet. So while there's some guessing about it, and there are some organizations that have had preliminary cracks at it, it's going to come from our county. There are some thoughts about, so for an example, if we have an A-B schedule with elementary school students, that the teacher would move between the two groups. There's others that would say that, okay, 12 and 12 is 24. So now you have a cohort of 24, but no more than 12 are sitting together. The only person in between is the teacher and aides, and they need to make sure they wash their hands and do their thing in between. So not a super clean answer on that yet. You know, at some point we need to be able to run a school, and there's going to be some concessions. There's going to be choices that are made that are going to have to tip into, okay, you've got a product, you've got something that you need to do. There are going to be trade-offs, and actually the word trade-offs is one that the public health department is using, and they're going to help us with what those trade-offs are. It's probably not going to be possible to say that we're going to have a group of 12 kids that will have no other contact, that will arrive at school, that will not have contact with anybody else, that will go to a classroom and have one teacher and have no other contact either with other students or their teacher with other students. That's not something that we're going to be able to deliver. So they're really talking more instead about how can we limit the contacts? How can we have break times in a way that only a smaller number of students are out at a time, to not have lunches in cafeterias for schools across the state that have those. So it's really working through those kinds of issues. I think it's going to be hard to say a cohort is 12 with one teacher, maybe an assistant, and that's it. That's just, we're not going to be able to do that. No one is. So that's what we're working through right now with the county public health department.
Thank you. All right, so that's it for comments on this item. I'm sure we'll be continuing to talk about this item on Friday and every other day we meet. The other item on our agenda is item 2B, budget planning and development for 2021. Dr. Austin.
So what we really wanted to talk about tonight, there's no presentation, there's no new information that is worth trying to walk through right now. We still have some uncertainties. But what we did want to talk to you about is process, because we're down to days. Okay, so I think Ms. Chow had told us June 12th is really drop dead day for her to be able to prepare her budget for final approval from the board, which, by the way, the state has maintained is our requirement, although they've shifted their own. So we have a deadline on our last meeting of June to approve the budget. So we just wanted to get some feedback from the board about process. I do think that we settled some of the biggest things that were creating issues and some uncertainty. I think the biggest one is Coverly. and taking that off, figuring that one out. I can tell you we are in some talks with people who have historically leased in Coverly, and we think that some of those groups may want to keep their current space, and that we have identified some space that we will not see a short-term need for with the school district. So that's going to be good news to some people, trying to help out in that way. And we have kind of some verbal yeses from groups, but we need to work through some details. But settling that $2.5 million piece of things was good. We have on our next agenda, our next full board meeting agenda, something about the child care component of that agreement also, which is good. So that part's becoming shored up. So didn't know if there are other topics that we really needed to spend specific time on. And absent that, we wanted to know what your thoughts were about process between now and the 12th.
Okay. Is that it, or does Ms. Chow have anything, or?
Ms. Chow, do you want to jump in?
No, just that the budget is being posted on the agenda. If it's not already finally posted, all the documents have been completed. So those will be available as soon as the agenda is posted on Friday for, for review and to, to study those documents.
Okay. Questions from board members? Raise your hands. Or any questions from the community? You can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're dialed in. I have a question, which is we had some discussion about the sustainability manager, and we've gotten some additional information about that. Are you, Ms. Chow, are you in contact with the people in the community who are doing analysis on that? Well, I think are basically trying to give you information to help inform your view. I just want to make sure you're getting that information directly.
Yes, I am getting that information directly, but I think it's, it's important to note that it's a program that is largely run by pretty much one person. And if that person isn't there, the program will be run differently. I mean, you can't reasonably expect that to run seamlessly without that person there, or otherwise, why would we have had that position to begin with? So on some level, I think we have to acknowledge that when positions are changed, that things are going to be done differently in the absence of, someone that is managing those specific programs.
Okay, well, perhaps you and I can talk about it offline. I would be interested in hearing, per our conversation at the last meeting, this is a removal of a position, not the removal of a program. And so understanding how the program's going to be maintained and making sure that we're on a path that will work. Since I do think the community and the board values this program, let's just make sure we're not setting ourselves up for failure. Ms. Bacon-Caswell.
Just on that, rather than you talking offline, I think it would be good, Ms. Chow, if you just came back to all of us and just told us how you were thinking through this. The one thing from the community that stood out for me particularly is there is some software that we use to track things. And obviously things are going to be different this year, right? I mean, we're going to have the windows open, we're going to be using Coverly, all those things. But I'm concerned that in the absence of having software tracking, we're back to where we were before, which is we just have one number and we don't know what's pushing at that number, for our heating use or our oil use or whatever, or water use. You don't have to answer this now, but if you, rather than just reporting to Mr. Collins, if you could report back to all of us, that would be really great.
Why don't we can plan on just having an update for everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, and then in terms of the schedule, just for both the board members and the community, in terms of the process by which we anticipate the budget's going to be finalized. Can you just walk us through the key dates and deliverables so that everybody kind of knows what to expect?
Certainly. So the budget is on the agenda. It will come out on Friday when the agenda is posted.
It's on the agenda for next Tuesday, the 9th.
For June 9th.
Yeah.
And it is on the agenda as a discussion item because it is the first read of the budget. So it is the budget and all of the entire supporting documents as well as the resolutions for the interfund borrowing and for budgetary transfers. It's a pretty robust set of documents around the budget. And then it will come back following the board meeting on the 9th. It will come back on the board meeting for the 23rd for final approval. It's a little different than in recent years past because of the fact that the budget has been separated from the LCAP. So both the public hearing as well as budget adoption will be on that same meeting on June 23rd.
Right. And just to clarify, there'll be a public hearing as there has to be on the 23rd. For our process, that tends to be a pro forma event that's just part of the regular board meeting, but there will be a public hearing. And the final budget, even after the first read, will be posted. I think for the public hearing, does it have to be 10 days before or something like that?
It is posted 10 days before, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so by the 13th, even if there are changes after the first read, you will be posting the final for approval by the 13th, subject to discussion by the board on the 23rd. Right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. If there are no more board questions, I do see Ms. Steiner has another question from the community. Shall we take that and then we'll be, I think, ready to wrap up? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Steiner. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just want to share some thoughts around sort of the layoffs. First, I just want to recognize these are not easy decisions, and in conversations that I've had, with district staff, I know that there's a lot of thought and hard decisions that have been made, and I want to recognize that. I do want to kind of put a few things forward. These are not folks that are, represented by our bargaining unit, but I'm just trying to understand and sort of follow up on Ms. Chow's point about if the sustainability where it's one person and that, program is going to look different. And I think that sort of impacts some of the other choices. And I'm asking for sort of an understanding of what will be the difference and what will be the plan, specifically around the custodial supervisor and risk management positions. Just from the titles of those positions, it seems like an interesting choice in the middle of a pandemic. How are we training our custodians? Who's going to be in charge? Who's supervising them? So I just want to get a sense of what the plan looks like for that. Same also with risk management. I'm assuming that department is integrally involved in creating whatever our safety plan will be. Research and evaluation has really been decimated here. I know that we discussed that we may not be doing state assessments and stuff, but I feel that we are going to have a need to really track how our kids are doing using these new modalities of presenting information to them. We're going to have distance learning, hybrid learning, smaller groups. And I'm also wondering if we're going to be in any way trying to track health or, contact tracing if we get cases within our school district, certainly in conjunction with the county. So those are just some of my questions around that. And I just would like to understand what the changes might look like and who's responsible. And I think it would be important for our community to hear that as well. One last thing to throw it out there, given all the stuff that is changing and new information, I'm just wondering if it makes sense to just stick to the start date of school that we had planned and done with the calendar committee for 3 years, And then the mode of delivery would simply be, if we're not allowed to reopen, distance learning continued, hybrid, or if we are allowed to reopen, that we reopen. Just some thoughts out there. And I just want to thank our entire community, all of our employees, all of our staff, our leadership, our board. I think there's been a lot of really hard work done by folks. And I just really want to express my appreciation for this very supportive and committed and involved community that we live in. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Ross, it didn't sound like there was, is there anything that you want to respond to on that specifically?
No, I think we'll have a description of each one of those pieces moving forward at an upcoming meeting. I think those are all completely reasonable requests. And an acknowledgement that reductions are tough and not taken lightly. And you know, as we all know, there's not a reduction that doesn't have a champion. And we're very mindful that these are real people we're talking about. So we will definitely have some explanation for each at our next meeting.
Sounds good. All right. So if there's no other comments from board members and no other community comments, then I think that's our agenda. And so we're adjourned. Our next meeting will be on Friday at, what do we say, 9 a.m.?
9 a.m.
Friday at 9 a.m., another special meeting. All right. Thank you all. See you then.